Okay, lesson 21. Last week we introduced Nadishrana Pranayama, reading from Hatha Yoga Pradipika chapter 2. We continue reading. Last week we read up until Sutra 10, so we start with 11. Chapter 2, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Sutra 11. After the introduction of the pranayama, Svatmarama continues to tell us that one should practice well kumbhakas 4 times a day, in the early morning, the midday, the evening, and midnight, gradually, until they number 80. First, the number 80. I already told you, if you try to do this as a breathing exercise, already at the basic count it's very hard. The basic count each is 40, 12, 48, 24, 48. Until they count 80. That is the ultimate, the highest count in pranayama. Starting with 80, 320, 160, 320. Takes a couple of years of regular practice to build up to this count. Gradually should really be upheld, should really respect the advice to do it gradually. Because when you rush it, well, the next sutras will explain what will happen if you rush it. But this count is very high, maximum count. And if it's already difficult at a basic count, you can imagine it's simply impossible to do it at the highest count and everything in between. There are so many indications that prove that pranayama just cannot be breathing exercise. That doesn't mean that the breathing exercise is not good. It's good to breathe. But pranayama is something else. It's just simply something else. Energy control is something else than breathing. It's very important to grasp that. The advice to practice the kumbhakas 4 times a day, early in the morning, midday, evening, and midnight, has a very practical reason. You are a human being, a ball of energy that is changing throughout the day and the night. Because in the universe, in nature, energy is constantly fluctuating, switching from Shiva domination to Shakti domination, and everything in between. That also means that you as a human being, being part of that energy, are fluctuating. That's why one moment you feel very active, another moment you feel lazy. One moment you feel a bit gloomy, another moment you feel excited. It's all energy. Now, why would Svatmarama advise you to practice this 4 times a day? Not that you have to practice an enormous amount of pranayama, but to become familiar not only with the exercise, but with yourself. Being subject to these changes of energy, he advises you to do this at several different times of the day. Why? Because, number 1, at several different times of the day you are in a different condition. That's 1. 2, the pranayama will have a different effect on you at different times of the day. And the only way to figure that out, to become familiar with it, is by doing it at different times of the day. So it doesn't mean every day 4 times a day. It means Sometimes you try in the morning, sometimes you try in the afternoon, sometimes in the evening, sometimes at midnight. It's just, and you don't have to stick exactly to these time indications, just try to experience different times of the day and try to observe how it affects you differently. Now here you have only the first pranayama exercise presented to you, but there will be 8 more. And each of those exercises has a different effect. One will increase Shakti energy, another one will increase Shiva energy. Then there is one that will increase both Shiva and Shakti at the same time, etc. And they all have their very distinct purposes. One will deal with infectious diseases, another one will deal with overall lack of energy. Then there is one that will deal with mental issues or Manipura chakra, fire issues. So very interesting if you see the logic there. And highlight the word gradually. 12th Sutra. In the first stage, there is perspiration. In the second, tremor is felt. And in the highest stage, the energy goes to the chief place, Brahmarandra. So one should control the energy. Get a mat and a cushion, Watson. Does this make any sense to you? Most people, even yoga specialists reading this, cannot really make much out of this. Some people, even when they meditate, they push really hard and they sweat or shake, and they see confirmation here because they take the text literally. The meaning behind this text is much more sophisticated, and when I explain it to you, you will nod and say, aha, because I've explained everything already. Only the concept being used here to explain certain conditions, rajas, tamas, and sattva, is being done in a rather dramatic way, using perspiration for rajas condition, shakti domination, using tremor, shivering for tamas condition, and of course the third, the highest stage, Brahmarandra, that is the result of sattva. Now if you look at this pranayama, you start in the first cycle with Shakti in, Shiva out, leading to rajas. Shakti in, Shiva out. You increase the amount of Shakti. Shakti domination equals rajas condition is perspiration. In the second cycle, you increase Shiva energy and you reduce Shakti, which leads to tamas, which is tremor is felt. But because you started with Shakti domination, then add Shiva domination, they will meet in the middle. Sattva will occur. A certain, maybe not perfect, but a certain level of sattva will occur after both cycles. First perspiration, then tremor, and then you are in the middle. If you understand this, the text is brilliant. Most people read this book in a very superficial way simply because they don't know what they're looking at. When you understand the background of all of this, you realize how brilliant Svatmarama was in writing this book. 13th Sutra. And it also it's kind of a stimulation from Svatmarama to tell you to not underestimate the value of the practice of pranayama. He confirms the value of pranayama by telling you what you can expect from it. 13th Sutra, rub on the body the perspiration resulting from fatigue. By this, the body derives firmness and lightness. Rub on the body the perspiration resulting from fatigue. Fatigue does not necessarily come in combination with perspiration. Perspiration is Shakti. Shakti domination does lead to fatigue. If you work hard, if you exercise hard, if you are awake for a long period of time, like 18 hours or 20 hours, you end up in a condition where there is no balance anymore. Because the body needs time to rest, to restore balance. When you are chronically fatigued, you wear out, literally wear out, as a result of being in a Shakti condition for a too long extended time. So rest is very important. That does not apply only to your yoga practice. This applies to everything in life. If you work hard, whether that is in the workplace or at home as a parent, if you work hard and many hours, you have to respect the natural law that you need rest. That is the rubbing of the perspiration, not literally rubbing perspiration into your skin or into your body. It simply means take a rest. You're active, combine activity with rest. Otherwise, you wear yourself out, leading to oxidation, aging, which is a buzzword these days when it comes to health, food, and so on. Antioxidants. Rest is one of the best antioxidants you can find. Of course, good food is important, but good food without rest does not have much effect. Fourteenth Sutra. In the early stages of practice, food mixed with milk and ghee is prescribed as the best diet. But when practice has advanced, such restrictions need not be observed. Again, this is not only about yoga practice, but if we limit it to yoga practice, you have lived your life in a certain way. One day you discover yoga and you start practicing every day. And in this time when this was written, people who dedicated themselves to yoga would dedicate themselves fully to yoga. So they would live with a guru, or they would go into a temple or a monastery, and they would basically practice all day. Meditation, also cooking, cleaning, but meditation, asana, pranayama, what have you. So when you are used to a relatively passive life, and suddenly you start becoming active, your body is being turned upside down and requires more energy, which you gain through food. Now, they didn't have Red Bull in those times. The power food of ancient times was honey, milk, ghee, those products that contain a lot of protein and sugar and what have you. But once you get rolling and you get used to the changes that you have brought about, you get used to your daily practice, you do not need to continue taking those foods anymore. You will notice, I have noticed several times, because I have been very austere in my diet, and it happened several times because of a big change that I lost too much weight in too short a time. And in the beginning I didn't understand it, and I got actually quite sick because of that. I suddenly, my average weight 15, 20 years ago was around 65 kilo, and I suddenly found myself weighing only 59, that never happened before, except for when I was a child, of course. And the first time that I weighed myself and found out I was 59 kilo, I weighed myself on an analog scale. I thought the scale was broken, so I threw it away and I bought a digital scale, and it was still 59 kilo. What happened was I started having constant headache, day and night. My muscles felt very stiff in spite of my everyday practice. Liver problems, kidney problems, heart, everything started to fail. That's what happens when you're totally undernourished. I didn't understand that, but then when I weighed myself the second time, confirming that I had lost too much weight, I went to the international clinic in Itaewon and had a comprehensive blood test done. Then looking at the numbers on the blood test, everything was lacking. All the vitamins, the essential minerals and what have you, everything was lacking. So I started eating like crazy 6-7 times a day. And all the problems were solved. That is this. If you subject yourself to new activities and it wears you out, compensate with power foods, not processed foods. No candy bars, nut bars, Red Bull, because those are presented as power foods, but they are not really. Milk products. I normally don't take milk products, but when I'm in urgent need of extra food, I make yogurt, and I eat yogurt with oatmeal and fruit and nuts every day. And one of my sins when I am seriously lacking nutrients is to make bread pudding. A bread pudding is full of eggs and heavy cream and bread, of course, whole wheat bread I use, of course, and lots of dried fruits like plums and these orange ones. I forgot the name of those, and raisins and what have you, lots of dried fruit. Then when I reach my desirable weight again, I naturally don't want to eat those things anymore. And if I do, I will end up like this. So, no, just very naturally, I just don't feel any appetite for those things anymore. So, important that you consider, this can happen when you change job, or when you haven't had a job and you start a new one. It can happen when you move to another house, to another city, to another country. There are things in life that just demand huge amounts of energy, and especially change demands huge amounts of energy. Then Satmaram is telling you to basically respect that, because your body asks for it. 15. As the lion, elephant, or tiger is tamed gradually, highlight gradually, even so should energy be brought under control, else it will kill the practitioner. That sounds very dramatic. I've never saw anybody drop dead from pranayama practice done wrong. But number one, building up your count. First of all, build up your count only if you practice regularly. If you practice regularly, once every month or so, you increase your count by a ratio of 4. You go from 12 to 16, from 16 to 20, etc. Gradually. Of course, you're eager, especially if you practice regularly, you become a little bit impatient because you want to push for results. But he's warning, if you do that, it won't kill you, but you may experience some unpleasant effects, like headaches and pain in the eyeballs and what have you, which is described in the following sutra. So highlight the word gradual and do not only introduce that into your life when you practice yoga, but apply this to everything that you do in life. We are human beings. We have two different ways of functioning. One is based on short term, and that's how almost everybody functions. People with vision, people with intuition, they have a different chamber up here where there is vision, and based on vision you clearly see that whatever it is that you want to achieve, especially when you talk about wishing, about fulfilling wishes in life, your deepest wishes in life, it can take years, sometimes decades to fulfill. And you simply have to be prepared to put in the time. How do you deal with your short term? Because a human being sometimes is torn apart. You're not always functioning based on vision, on the crown chakra, because your energy is fluctuating. So just like all other people, you have your moments of greed, of impatience, of restlessness, wanting things to speed up a little because it's all taking so much time. How do you deal with that? Keep yourself busy with your daily life, with your chores, with practical issues that need to be taken care of in line with your long-term vision. You may need to re-educate yourself. You may need to save up money. You may need to. You have to lay the foundation for that future project to come to fruition. So deal with your impatience by simply focusing on practical daily issues, including taking care of yourself. Practice yoga, eat healthy food, because you function best if you have large amounts of energy. And if you ignore that, your energy levels drop, your functioning in the crown chakra becomes dim, and everything starts falling apart. So especially in times of instability, restlessness, conflict, take good care of yourself. Eat well, exercise regularly, maintain your most important asset, which is your energy. Energy equals health, equals strength. So energy will not be maintained if you don't take care of your health and your strength, and especially in challenging times, it becomes more important. And interesting is the analogy of the lion, elephant, or tiger being tamed. Wild animals can be tamed. But if you do that with violence, it can work, but the animal can turn against you. You can impose your will on a wild animal with violence, but then the animal will participate or cooperate only out of fear. That means that one day the animal will attack you. But if you do it the yoga way, which is what I apply to my dogs, is you provide them a stable basis, a stable foundation. Because animals are wild because they are functioning based on their deepest instincts, fear, survival. So give them, become friends. There are still, if you search YouTube, there are people who become friends with crocodiles. There are people who become friends with lions, with tigers, what have you. It's possible. But you have to understand their chakras. You have to understand their basic needs. Feed them. Give them a regular routine daily, on a daily basis. And gradually, be very, very patient. They will come to you when they open their mind to you. It works the same with people, but with people you can reason. With animals, you just have to take care of pacifying their animal instincts. Their animal instinct is to survive, and that includes eating other animals or human beings. So if you eliminate those needs, they can gradually become your friend. 16. Through the proper practice of pranayama, there is freedom from all diseases. By a mistaken course of yoga, the practitioner brings all diseases upon himself. So, proper practice of pranayama and a mistaken course of yoga. When you talk about diseases, when Svatmarama talks about diseases, he's not only talking about getting a cold or any kind of physical disease, but also including mental problems like stress, like unhappiness, like impatience, and what have you. It is again an indication that yoga has to be learned properly. And the world that we live in, there are actually not so many properly initiated yoga teachers left in this world. I have met many yoga teachers, and sometimes I'm just shocked by their lack of knowledge of yoga. A couple of years ago, started working with the Korea Yoga Federation, and they're very smart. They're very good at running business. They wanted to work with me. They invited me to join them to legitimize their business. What they do is they open a studio and they make it very nice. They know how to do that. They open like 12 studios a year and they keep expanding. Their memberships are more expensive than those of other studios, and yet they have more members than the other studios. So they're doing something right. But they put sutras from Patanjali on the walls, which looks very mysterious. You enter such a studio with the smell of incense, and you see this mysterious sutra on the wall from Patanjali. They have no idea what it means, what they put on the wall. They have no idea the meaning behind the philosophical text that they put on the wall. But it attracts people, it attracts customers. So I was done with them very quickly. They made promises they didn't keep, and they were, you know the word kapjir? Kapjir is a practice in Korean companies where people are being bullied. That's how they worked. It was so totally anti-yoga that I stayed there for 6 months only because I need 6 months to finish one cycle of course. But after 1 month I was already basically done with them. I just kept the peace for another 5 months and planned my way out of there. Now they're working with an Iranian guy. Maybe you know Yogi Daniel? Yogi Daniel was very famous in the 80s and 90s because he's a contortionist. He can fold himself up so small that he fits in a small glass box. The reason why you don't know him is because you were still a baby at that time when he left for LA to have his daughter and son educated about 17, 18 years ago. So he came back 4 years ago. He approached me also to work with me. That also didn't work out. But he is now working with the Korea Yoga Federation to basically give them a face, to give them a legitimate front, so to speak. But he's also not a yogi, he's a contortionist. But he was very famous in Korea because he can fold himself up in a box. So he appeared on TV a lot doing that trick, Yogi Daniel. You can search Yogi Daniel on Naver search. Yogi Daniel, it will be full of information about this guy. And he's fluent in Korean, of course. He came to Korea when long before foreigners actually came here, other than the American army. And he's married with a Korean lady still, and they have 2 children. Those children also are doing quite well. Anyway, there's so many fake yoga and so many not properly educated or trained or initiated, I should use, people who pretend to be authorities in yoga. 17. A wrong course of pranayama produces hiccup, asthma, bronchial diseases, pains in the head, ears and eyes, and various other diseases. This is a little bit funny because that's exactly what happens if you try to do the exercises that are described here in the form of breathing exercise. It's simply not practically possible. 18. Remember I told you someday that there is a sutra in this book that contains the word gradual 3 times in one sentence? Here you have it. Sutra 18. One should gradually efflux the energy and as gradually draw it in. One should also restrain it gradually. Thus, siddhi is obtained. Yoga is not about flexibility. Yoga is not about diet. It's not about a beautiful body. It's not about all the things that people think that yoga is about. It's about siddhi. What is siddhi? Siddhi is what we call supernatural or paranormal abilities. Everything that is located in the crown chakra. Your ability to vision is not something from your eyes. It's a sense of being able to look at the past and understand the future. That is one of the siddhis. Siddhis is your ability to communicate with animals. I have shown that I have that siddhi because nobody could take care of these 2 dogs before I got there. There are 30 siddhis described in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, chapter 3. Communicating with animals is one of them. The people think communicating with animals can't talk. No, it's not. It's subtle. Communication with animals and plants, for that matter, is subtle. You do that by feeling, by connecting with the essence of who you are, what you are dealing with. If you focus on your dog or your cat or canary, whatever you have as a pet, you can know what they try to tell you, which usually is related to their basic needs. They're happy or they're unhappy. They want to have a cuddle or they want you to stay away. And there are just many signals that they give that many people do not pick up. They just don't connect. Siddhis we call paranormal or supernatural, but every person who practices yoga develops certain siddhis. Maybe not all 30. But siddhis are based on sensitivity. Not just sensitivity, but refined senses, sixth sense, intuition. There are some of those siddhis that seem unrealistic, like one of the siddhis is to wake up dead people, which is a phenomenon that is described in the Bible, I think Lazarus. But there is some symbolical meaning behind that, for sure. Anyway, siddhis result from proper yoga practice, and here you see also that is the awakening, the manifestation of those characteristics in the crown chakra. That is the real goal of yoga. As a side effect, you will become healthier. You will have a more nicer body. But those are not the goal. If you practice only for a nice body, then go back to the previous sutras. Diseases and unhappiness and what have you will come upon you. Sutra 90. When the nadis are purified, there are external signs. Leanness and brightness of the body are definitely produced. The nadis are the energy channels. The exercise that was introduced last week is called Nadi Shodhana Pranayama. Cleansing, purifying, Shodhana, the nadis, the energy channels. Energy lies at the foundation of everything. The sutra is just confirming, if you practice pranayama, you increase the circulation of energy and the amount of energy. It's only natural that you start feeling healthier and looking healthier. 20th Sutra, when one is able to restrain the energy as desired, when the gastric fire becomes more active and the nada is heard, there is perfect health because the nadis are purified. When one is able to restrain the energy as desired, means that you will learn to assess your condition and pick the appropriate pranayama that you need to correct your condition. That's a little bit difficult to see now because you only learned Nadi Shodhana Pranayama and only with very little experience so far. But there are 8 more pranayamas and each of them have their particular way of changing your condition. So one will be helpful when you're very tamas, another one will be very helpful when you're rajas, etc. So we will, after we are done practicing Nadi Shodhana Pranayama 13 times, we will then introduce 4 more pranayamas, including their quality. So when you are able to restrain the energy as desired, means this: you develop the ability to assess your condition and accordingly pick the proper pranayama that will correct your condition, that will lead to sattva as desired. You will be able to determine your condition anytime, under any circumstances, eventually, of course. When the gastric fire becomes more active, the 3 chakras in the belly that in Korea are called danjan, increased energy below the diaphragm, between the groin and the diaphragm. And the nada is mentioned here. Notice that nada is mentioned here. Many people who read this book, who have studied this book, you ask them about nada and they will they will look bewildered. What are you talking about, nada? What is nada? It's mentioned here. Many yogis never heard of nada, and they never heard nada. Strange. There are other sutras where nada is mentioned. It's directly called nada. It's called the inner sound. It's called the mysterious sound. There are various ways to mention nada. It also implies that when you purify, nada becomes clear. Nada becomes apparent. Remember, the very first class I mentioned, nada, 80% of the students never heard it. Now all of you are familiar with nada. You practice, and along the way, you realize, hey, it's there. The sutra is telling exactly this. Good. What follows now, Sutra 21, is the introduction of Kriya. Try to see the logic. You've done chapter 1 without reading it. We will read that from next week. But we've done that. Yama, niyama, practice of asana, and some details about how to practice properly, where to practice properly, a little bit about food. We will talk about that from next week also. Then chapter 2, we did something strange. We started with Kriya, just for the sake of efficiency. We introduce Kriya because Kriya comes before Pranayama. It's a bridge between chapter 1 and Pranayama. Now that we have introduced Pranayama after we did Kriya, we will jump from Sutra 20 to Sutra 39 after the break. Not now. For now we are done. After the break we skip the part of Kriya because we've already done that. But why I'm telling you this explicitly is hoping that you will see the logic here. The connection between one section of the text and other section of the text. Because most people see this in a very compartmentalized way. They don't see the logic, they don't see the systematic build-up, but it's very systematic. If you see that, you see how brilliant this text is. And I keep drawing your attention to it because too many people keep themselves busy with material like this without actually knowing what they're looking at. They have no idea how special it is what is that they are reading. And that is also the reason why you are being told to keep it secret. This should be only revealed to people who are ready for it, deserving of it. Okay? Questions? Okay, let's have a short break before we start with the asana.